So a couple months ago, we took a look at this. This is an RX480. This is architecture from about 2016 or so. Polaris, 14 nanometer process from AMD, and still a very, very solid card. We did a video on this and just to see how it was in late part of 2022. And spoilers, yeah, it's a pretty good card. Then came this animal. This is an RX580 2048 SP, which means it is a cut down version of the original RX580, fewer streaming processors and a little bit slower clock speed. We're going to take a look at the two and see how they compare to each other. Okay, so as I was saying, both of these are basically the same architecture. The RX480 came out first. The RX580, the 500 series was basically a refresh of the 400 series. Better clocks, a little bit better optimized, a little bit better drivers. And they were a very popular, I mean, the 400 series were also, but the 500 series continued to make that very popular for several years. And including, I mean, still to this day, these are being manufactured brand new. So it is a cut down version of the original 580, but you can still find RX 580s on the market. What does that mean for this? That means that this will come up in your drivers on Windows and on MSI Afterburner and all that stuff, actually as an RX 570. Now, I already did a video about whether I'm upset because this is a 570 instead of what they call a 580, but I knew kind of what I was expecting to get. Now, I expected the drivers to be able to say something different, but that's okay because the drivers do work on this and they work fine. And I was able to actually go ahead and compare this to the older RX 480. So we've got something, some work to do. We got some things to compare and see how they work out. It will, in most ways, compare itself to the RX 570, excuse me, which if you go back and you kind of check numbers and check the way things came out and the hierarchy of the stack itself, the RX 580 was right along the level of the RX 480 before it. So I wanted to see if this RX 580 cut down version, which we know is a 570, I wanted to see if that actually compared the same way to this RX 480 and how it would do in early 2023. I wasn't disappointed. Was I upset because I got something that comes across as an RX 570 instead of what 580 on paper? Not at all, because I did kind of know this was going to have less performance than the original card. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start. We'll do all our benchmarks like we normally do, and I'm going to go ahead and start with Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And right away, you see that the newer card does a little bit better. Now, this is almost within margin of error, but not quite. It's enough to make a difference, and you can see that the RX 580 cut down version, I guess we can call it the SP, like the RX 580 SP, actually does a little bit better than the RX 480. I don't think this is as much to do with age as there's just something a little bit better optimized with this game. And it shows. The RX 580 does come out on top here. Now, moving on to Borderlands 3, similar, almost the same thing. We do see that the RX 580 SP version is a little bit better in this game. It is optimized a little bit more. Both, keep in mind, both of these are the same structure, the same architecture type of card. The RX 580 SP version is just a newer card, both newer in design and newer in manufacturing than the older RX 480. So it's not really a surprise that this is ahead here either, but I'm not sure if I was kind of expecting that. I thought I was expecting it to be a little bit more even between the two of them. That's kind of what we got with Far Cry 6. Far Cry 6, both of these are pretty close. Again, these are really almost statistically the same. They're within margin of error. The older RX 480 does pull a little bit of ahead here. It's not a measurable amount, but it is enough to say, okay, there's a slight difference here, and it's repeatable. So you can see it every single time you test. With Forza Horizon 5, this is a statistical dead heat. These two are not only the same in almost every single test, but they are overall, and when I looked at resolutions that were higher, like Extreme and Ultimate and all that, they were still within a frame or two of each other. So it's not just the high, medium, and low I'm showing here. They also do that when I measured down to 720 low, and they did that all the way up at 1440 Extreme. World War Z, it's almost another statistical dead heat here. The RX480 does pull out just a little bit ahead at the lower resolution, or 1080p, but not enough to notice. And it's well within a margin of error. It's a frame or two off is definitely within a 3% error. Horizon Zero Dawn, this is usually the great equalizer, but in this case, again, we're seeing a statistical dead heat. They're within margin of error of each other. Now, it is repeatable, and it is something you can see that the RX480 is ahead every single time, but they're so close. I mean, it's and don't forget, you can play this on, say, 1080p medium, or in this case 1080p original. You're getting better than 60 frames per second at both of these cards, and it looks great. So Horizon Zero Dawn is a great looking game, but being able to play it at 60 frames per second with that looks very, very good. And I have to remind you that some of these games do have stuff like Fidelity, FX, Super Resolution, and all that built in, where you can select those. None of these are selected unless it was part of the actual default settings. Like Forza Horizon 5 sometimes will do that, and then Cyberpunk, that we'll see in a minute, does that. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, this is another one. Both of these are almost identical all the way through. There's 1 or 2 frames different on some of these. Not enough to be able to tell. And even in this case, 1440p medium is 60 frames per second. Very playable, and another very beautiful game. Cyberpunk, this is the one we were talking about a minute ago. And I have no idea why this optimizes so much better for the RX480 than it does the RX580. The only thing I can think is there's some things in the drivers for the RX570 or the new 2048 SP, some things that aren't quite tweaked just enough for Cyberpunk. But again, it's one of those games that you can use Fidelity FX on, and 1080p or 1080p medium. Again, we're hitting close to 60 frames per second, or over 60 or right at 60 frames per second. So it looks really, really good. And this is one of those games that when it first came out, running a Ryzen 7 3700X and an RTX 2070, I was lucky to hit 42 frames per second with this. And now, either 1440 low or 1080p medium, you're getting closer to 60 frames per second. That's just not too bad. Really, really not too bad. Again, I don't know why the RX480 tends to optimize just a little bit better at this, but neither one of these are horrible. And all of them are above 30 frames per second. But, I mean, let's face it, we're going to try to get as much out of this as we can. And we're probably going to be running Fidelity FX or some kind of upscaler along with that. Our esports title, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, you might as well just say these are the same. They're within a couple of frames, and when you're talking a couple of 100 frames per second, a few frames aren't going to matter. Again, it's a statistical dead heat, and both of these perform very, very well. So looking at this, you're probably thinking, well, if both these cards are the same, then why are you making a video like this? And true, because I have recently made a couple of videos, namely trying to compare 6-core 12-thread CPUs and an RX 6600 XT with an RTX 3060, where they're basically within a few frames of each other, or almost the same performance. And both of these cards also perform very, very closely, just like those two. Why am I not frustrated with these like I was with the other ones? Well, it's because there is a very, very big difference between these, even though it doesn't measure out that way. These RX480s, the older ones, right now are, unless you know somebody that knows somebody, these are pretty much only available on the used market. That means if you're going to be finding this somewhere, it's going to be on eBay, it's going to be on one of those sites, it's going to be on Facebook Marketplace or something like that. You are not going to be able to find this brand new in a package unless somebody has this on their shelf somewhere in your local PC store and forgot about it. And they were cleaning shelves and doing inventory one day and went, oh, what's this box? And it had a couple of these in it. This has several different models, and this case is MLLSE. I don't know how to pronounce it, don't ask me. But there's a couple of other brands that also sell pretty much the same exact card. It's a brand new production. It's being made right now. It probably will not Probably will not go out of production at least till the end of this year, I would think. Both of these have driver support. The one thing that you have to remember with this card is because it is a different configuration as far as what they call it or how they set up the clock speed and all that. This does come out as an RX570 instead of 580 when you're looking at your drivers and everything. Is that a deal breaker? No, not at all. So, like I said, the biggest difference between these two, and the reason why I'm not upset with this comparison, this is an older card that's not available anymore. This one is brand new and available all day long. You can get it on Newegg, you can get it on Amazon, you can get it on sites like Alibaba and all that, all day long. And the price is normally between about $90 and $120 or $130. Probably cheaper if you go to a site like Alibaba and you can wait, say, 3 or 4 weeks instead of a week to try to get the card itself. So I thought that because I had it and because I was looking at them, these two were the best comparison. And I was dead on. I mean, these two are as close as you can get without being the same exact card. Unless they were the same manufacturer and one of them came and said it was an OC version of something or had a bigger heat sink so it stayed cooler. Both of these, by the way, temperatures and all that stuff, not a problem at all. Fan noise, no problems with either one. In fact, this one was very, very quiet. It surprised me. When I was testing this, the first several times I was doing and running tests, they were so close within a frame or two of each other. I had to make sure that I wasn't retesting the RX480 because a lot of times I'll get just a little bit of variation when I'm doing tests, and that's the reason why you have to do more than one benchmark test at a time, or more than one benchmark test run, so you can go ahead and get numbers and make sure that they all match up, or you can compare or take an average of. But when I was doing it, I had to go back and double check to make sure that it was a different card. It was an easy way to tell that it was different because the power plug is on the end of this instead of on the top, like the RX480, and this one has white LEDs, so it shows up different. In any case, very good card. I was very happy with the purchase. Very happy with the comparison, and I hope that if somebody is still out there and they're looking for something for a budget build, that they won't be afraid to try to pick up one of these, because actually it's a pretty solid buy. You just have to know what it is you're buying. That's all. So that's it for that comparison. I don't know what the next step for either one of these is. This RX480, unless something drastic happens, is not ever going to go out of my possession again. But this will probably go in a build that gets sold somewhere because I can get another one of these, at least until a time where they're not available anymore, and then I have to figure out what I'm going to do with that. But I like the 480 too much. It meant a lot because it went through a lot of things with me. I don't past that. I mean, they are what they are. Two very, very good cards, still very relevant cards. One of them highly available right now, and doesn't break the bank. So that's always a good thing, right? So I do have other things coming up soon. I might be getting a laptop to sort of do a review or some benchmark tests on. I know I've done a couple of reviews. It's not really my thing, but I've done a couple of reviews on notebooks or testing in notebooks to see how well they do. And they're usually like ultra thins or 2-core or something. This one's a little bit different. It's got a 12700K, I believe, in it. So we'll see how it does if I get it, if things work out and I test it. If not, no great shaker. There's other things going on as well, but that might be one of those things to look forward to. Other stuff coming up, I have a mixed bag of things. We'll just put it that way. I'm working on some things for some other videos that I hope they work out, but I don't want to say too much just in case they don't work out. But as always, I'm going to ask you or remind you to go ahead and check me out on those other socials. ThatPaulGuy.tech is the website. I will go ahead and put links to the, well, there are already links to these, and I'll put them in the description. Several of these RX580, 2048 SPs, I'll go ahead and put them down in the description. It is an Amazon link. It does help the channel. It doesn't cost you anything to do that. I'll go ahead and put those there, and of course on ThatPaulGuy.tech. Don't forget to visit me on the other socials, Twitter and all that stuff as well. And the only other thing I'm going to ask you, and a lot of you already know it's coming, is just be nice to each other, okay? Just do one thing, one nice thing, okay? Hold the door open, smile, wave. I always tell you guys to do that. I always ask you guys to do that. You don't know what a difference you might be able to make in somebody's life just by doing one polite thing. That right person at that right time, if you do something nice, you have no idea how it could change their whole day. Maybe even, maybe even part of their life. You never know. So Take that chance, you know? Just be nice to somebody. Till next time, that is all I have. I'm sure there's something else I can tear up or get into, and I'll be doing it if it's possible. But until then, that is all I have, so I'll see you later.